So, ladies and gentlemen, what are we talking about? We have a reality in our economy, the reality of currency. That's what we want to talk about. Review of structured currency framework. Like the former speaker has already alluded to, there's been some policy pronouncements and adjustments around the issues of currency. So we want to dive deep into that issue. That's why I posed the discussions around responding to the previous presentation, so that we marry the two, since they are very, very much related. So I'm aware that as you respond to the subject matter, I'm aware there are one or two issues you'd want to refer to from this previous speaker. We'll allow you to do that. My appeal to all of us is we are business executives, we are captains of industry. That makes us leaders, that makes us influencers, that makes us role models and community leaders. As we express our thoughts, as we express our ideas, let's remain professional as we do so. I'm aware this is a very, very sensitive subject that may touch our nerves and tempt us to express our thoughts in certain ways. So I'm appealing to all of us as we articulate our issues. Let's remain professional, no name calling. Let's have the facts. Let's leave the personalities. Let's deal with issues, policies, and things that we can walk out of this place and carry home saying, okay, out of the Congress, these are the issues. Emotions will not make our business strategies. We will not be able to make business strategies out of emotions, in as much as we may be tempted to articulate ourselves in certain ways. So I'm really appealing to the room to say, look, we know why we are here. Let's stick to the agenda of the Congress. And I'll use my right as the facilitator to make adjustments to your approach should I find it out of line. Thank you very much. A round of applause for our panelists before we bring them on board. Right, so we will start by having a short presentation from Dr. Stephen Moyo from Reserve Bank. He's an economist there. He's representing the Deputy Governor who could not be with us. So he's going to give us a very summarized, I'm aware that as Reserve Bank, probably you have a 100-page book concerning the subject, but if you could just summarize it in a few minutes, because the whole idea is to have a discussion. Also want to give time to the discussion around the issue at the end of the day. A round of applause for Dr. Moyo.
Good morning, everyone. Can I write on all the protocols observed yesterday and also today? My name is Dr. Stephen Moyo. I'm representing the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. I'm going to give you a brief on what we have done and some perspectives from our side. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Hawkins for your presentation. We also have reservations from your, that's how you see the situation or how you analyze it, but we also have our view on how we are moving forward. On my part is I would like to give you the context of where we were coming from, why we had to have the, sorry. Oh, okay. All right, why we had to move the direction that we took to introduce the structured currency. Introducing the structured currency was a strategic move by the bank. We're looking at what was happening if you look at in the first 3 months of the year, there's a lot of exchange rate instability, inflationary pressures, there's a lot of uncertainty. And it was very, very difficult for business to really make decisions. And then we actually see that the volatility actually worsened from December 2023, and this actually dented the confidence in the local currency, the Zimbabwe dollar. So There were also compounding the challenges that we actually were seeing with the climatic shocks and also adverse expectations. You know, the economic agents also had adverse expectations. So again, there was also the issue of shortage of US dollars, change, like for convenience, also the local currency notes. You know, there was also a complaint that, you know, we need, you know, we have to increase the denominations. And also, there was actually a need for us to recalibrate the monetary policy framework. And this is what led us to where we are now, where we're to get to introducing a new currency called ZIG. Right. Sorry. Okay. So, what does it entail, the recalibrated framework? We wanted to have a situation where the exchange rate is market determined. The willing buyer, willing seller. So it was a refinement from the previous auction system. There were a lot of complaints from the market. They were saying the auction systems, people had reservations about it. So we had to move to the new system, to the refined, to the willing buyer, willing seller framework. If you see how it works, is that government buys the surrender, and the surrender, 50% of the surrender, it goes back to the market. So it relieves pressure from the government to buy all the surrender. So 50% goes to the market, and part of it is for building reserves, and part of it is for government to settle obligations, because government has got obligations that are actually paid in foreign currency. Because if you look at the structure of the economy, we've got few, the foreign currency generation is actually concentrated in a few players that generate a lot of foreign currency. So that has to be redistributed in the economy, in the national interest. So we have to make sure that that cake is shared. Those that can afford to access foreign currency, at least that allows them to access foreign currency. Right. The other bit is that we want to have an efficient and optimal money supply management, where we are looking at a setup where money supply growth is in line with limits of growth in foreign currency and gold reserves. So that's the constraint that we have actually put in. Right. So then we introduced the structured currency, right? First of all, with the structured currency, is in some people will think that, oh well, it's just those notes, even those bank balances. That was the ZIG that we're talking about. And then the paper form and the note, the note and coin form were the notes that we released later on. And it's what we've actually seen in the market is that the market has embraced the local currency, the ZIG, and they're actually using it. And there's actually a huge appetite by some sectors that are saying we want the notes and coins for change purposes and so forth. Right. Again, in introducing the local currency, there was also a need to have supportive measures, because you have the local currency, but we also have to have a setup where it's actually supported, because the success of the local currency is the success for all of us, the households and also you in business. So we looked at the issues of obligations, tax obligations. The government is saying part of the obligations should be paid in local currency. So let me move to the next slide. Oh, sorry. Right. So this is the new. These are the new notes and coins. We have the 10. From the 1 ZIG to the 5 ZIG. We also have the 10 ZIG. I'm sure you've seen the notes, and we actually noticed that there was a challenge that some of the sectors of the economy, they were having challenges in accessing those notes and coins. So we've also partnered with, actually there are some that have actually come and assisted in making sure that the distribution of the notes and coins is actually as wide as possible. We've also done even sensitization exercises where we've gone to all the provinces in the country to give people information about the new currency, even the remote areas where they're, all the 10 provinces, and also gathering views on how they think we can make things better and increase convenience for them. And the main message that we're getting from those outreach programs is that people are saying they're embracing the local currency and they are keen to use it, and it's for the benefit of the country, right? And then again, so we have organizations like HomeLink. They also have cash kiosks at bus termini where, you know, people can actually get the local currency, like the notes and coins. Again, retailers have also, you know, employed them also to approach their bankers and withdraw the Z cash so that they can actually, you know, alleviate the issue of change. Because there's a lot of complaints about change problems where, you know, people are given sweets, you know, everything. Sweets and, you know, anything that would substitute for change. So it's one of the challenges that we're also trying to solve. Right. So in the next slide is, okay. So, right. Government is actually committed, and the bank were actually committed to make ZIG a success. And there are a lot of complementary measures that we've actually put in place. And we remain open to revise or refine the measures so that the currency is stable and it works. The robust liquidity management. So we're actually setting targets that the liquidity should not exceed certain targets, especially excess liquidity. We also are maintaining a tight monetary policy stance. And again, we are containing money supply growth. Remember, we've already put a constraint that the ZIG that we issue should be in tandem with the reserves that we have. So, I mean, we have. I'm sure you saw the president and the governor. They went to the vaults and they opened the vaults. We all saw the gold reserves that we have. So our goal is to grow those reserves so that they actually back our currency. And when we get more if we export more, we continue also to allocate part of the foreign currency that we receive to build the reserves in US dollars. So those are the measures that we're taking to support the currency. And again, we're actually encouraging all the stakeholders. Let's accept our currency. It's our currency. And it's with using our own currency has got a lot of advantages. Yes, the US dollar, we're using it. It's a transition. But for you to really be competitive out there, the local currency is key. And one of I was actually listening to the discussions. There was the issue of value chains, internalization of value chains. That's actually one of the measures that will be key to make sure that we actually reduce our dependence on importing things that we can actually make here in this country. It can actually support, you know, our currency. All of us have got a role to play to make sure that our currency becomes a success. So we're encouraging all stakeholders, let's embrace the currencies, let's use it, and we will grow as an economy. And again, as a bank, we are committed to walking the talk. So we want to maintain consistency and build trust in ZIG. Yes, it's a process, we understand, but we are committed to make sure that we walk the talk. And again, the other part is that we want to effectively communicate the message to the market because with this world of social media, anything goes. Anyone can have their own opinions, and it can sway public opinion, and you know. But we are saying what we want to do. We want to make things work. And that's why we continue to listen when you go for outages like, we go to places like these ones where there's a conference, and everywhere we go, we take all those views and we refine them, and we put them into the policy making processes. Right. Again, there's the, okay, I'm being told about time. Right, so this is, so the bank has been taking robust liquidity management. So you actually find that we have not exceeded the target that we have set, that, you know, for excess liquidity, it should be below the optimum that we set of 166 million ZiG. Right, and also there is also the Liquidity Management Committee, which has the central bank, we have the Minister of Finance, we have also the tax authority. We are actually meeting regularly so that we focused the liquidity injections and withdrawals so that whatever happens there does not destabilize the currency. Right. And then we're still maintaining the tight policies. So we have our interest rates, the policy rate, it was maintained by the MPC yesterday. We've kept it at 20%. And we are actually envisaging that we are going to remain, we're going to keep the policy rate tight so that we get the desired positive real interest rate. So the banks are actually lending at more than 20%. That's what we're seeing from the statistics there. Right. Right. I'll add again on measures also to boost the demand for ZiG. So what we're doing to boost the demand for ZiG is that you actually see that government is also supporting the bank in making sure that, you know, there is a home for ZiG. We're mandating that government departments, they accept ZiG for payments. Also, in order to curb illicit transactions in the financial sector, the relevant agencies are actually working flat out to ensure that there is no abuse of the financial system. Abuse of the financial system comes at a cost to the country because we can be gray listed. So once they actually classify us in that context, it actually increases the cost of doing business. So we want to make sure that there is discipline in the use of the financial sector products. Right, and also if you've seen recently, the government has also, you know, reiterated its commitment on the issue of QPDs, that QPDs should be paid, a portion of the QPDs are paid in local currency so that the local currency has a home. And then again, government and the bank were committed to ensuring that ZiG is stabilized. So there is a commitment, and we are working towards that. Right. And again, there is the, I think I'm about to be done. So right, so we are saying again, or reiterating our stance that we're going to be walking the talk to contain money supply. And if you see from the graphs, something is just up. So we've actually maintained that the cover of the money that is issued is I want to fully back ZiG at all the time. Basically, that's the summary of this slide. So as we accumulate more reserves, we can issue out more currency. Right. I think it's right. So you can actually see that also in the. I'm sure we have seen that in the market. There's actually some stability in the exchange rate, and also even in the power market. Even the premium has actually gone down, and it's actually been stable for some time, ever since we introduced the new currency. So we want to see stability in the local currency. That's what we're working flat out to do. And again, in terms of the inflation numbers that were released recently, you actually see that there is, of course, the annual inflation. Of course, we started our base year now. Our base period is now April when we introduced the currency. We actually saw that in May, month-to-month inflation for ZIG actually fell. So, and actually, it's actually showing some evidence of some price correction that's happening in the economy. And again, the ZNCC is also going to be publishing the US dollar inflation. So going forward, we're going to be seeing that. Right. I think it's 2 more slides, and then I think we are done. Then the takeaways, what we are seeing is that the public has embraced the ZIG, and it's our hope, it's actually our goal to ensure that the local currency is the preferred currency for domestic transactions, and the US dollar for foreign transactions, going back to normalcy. That's our desire, and that's our goal, and that's what we're working towards. So we are also working on also putting any measures that will actually ensure that the currency is stable. And having a stable currency will improve business planning, and it will support businesses, right? I think it's jamming a bit. It's my last slide now. Right, that's my last slide. So we're saying certainty and predictability will allow long-term planning and investment, which is key for industrialization. There's a lot of discussions on industrialization. That's what we want to support as the bank. And once we have that stability, we'll attract the capital, domestic and as well as FDI. And again, it will also, using the local currency, it will also support the competitiveness of Zimbabwe. Because if you're using a foreign currency, like what we're doing now for domestic transactions, you know, we tend now to say, okay, people are importing as much as they can. So yes, it's really not a good setup for if we want to build our industrial base and have the factories, you know, producing goods. Right. So I think basically that's what we have for now as a Reserve Bank. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moyo from Reserve Bank, giving the central bank perspective as far as the subject matter is concerned. And I'm sure we are raring to go in terms of the discussion around the currency. But before we do that, just an announcement. Our lunch is going to be delayed. It's going to be at 2. So what we're going to do is that we will try and have everything else that's outstanding for this afternoon. We'll have it before that lunch. So when we go for lunch at 2, we don't have to come back, so that we have ample time to prepare for the very important evening function that we have. As you know, we have the Presidential Business Awards function that we have here, and it requires quite a lot of preparations. That's why we need to give you ample time to prepare. So after lunch, we are not coming back here. We are going to prepare for the evening function. So we will have to manage our time between now and lunch so that we fit in the discussion and all the other things that we needed to do. Right, we are talking about structured currency, and the Reserve Bank has articulated the perspective from a policymaker point of view. But we also want to hear from market players how the currency issue is affecting the market, but most importantly, if there are any proposals, recommendations or action points that can be taken or recommended to the policymakers or to business executives as they plan for their businesses, or any other stakeholders that may be there. Okay, right. So If I could have this removed here, I think so that maybe just put it somewhere there. That would help. Okay. Right. We've just heard from the Reserve Bank, and we have an advisor from the Reserve Bank. No, from who advises the Minister of Finance. And I just want to tie up the two, since they are on the policymaker side. We have heard from Reserve Bank, and we also have an advisor to the Minister of Finance. Prof is with us here. I'm sure you want to respond to a few issues that have been articulated. Please, let's bear in mind all the speakers. We are pressed for time, so you have under 2 minutes to make your response. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Mr. Facilitator, and thank you very much, ZNCC, for inviting me to this function today. Chris is a very old friend, and we've been working on policy reform for almost 20 years now. So we are comrade in arms. So thank you. And thank you, Mr. President, also for having me here. All protocols observed. So I think, if I'm not going to respond to Hawkins' presentation, because we would spend the rest of the day debating those issues, but I just want to raise a few points.
I must say thank you so much for that. Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for that. That's maturity. Thank you very much.
But I think that it's important for the gathering here to be aware of certain issues which are of relevance in terms of his presentation. So the first thing I'd like to say is a couple of comments. If we follow what Tony Hawkins has been saying, and we had this debate about 20 years ago, I remember, he had predicted that the economy will collapse. And I had disagreed with him and said the economy will never collapse. So I think we are still here 20 years later, and he's still predicting that the economy will collapse. So if we are to take all his numbers seriously, basically we shouldn't be where we are. We should be somewhere else. So I think, and I would like to indicate why what he has said needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. So that's my first comment. My second comment is that it may surprise him, but actually we agree with a lot of what he has said. We agree. And in fact, if his policy menu is very much part of the thinking of government today. So we don't really disagree. What I'd like to more comment about is that he has put complete doubt about the inflation statistics, the GDP statistics, the growth rates, and all this is completely unwarranted. We should not have this kind of gloom and doom picture where we are misleading people. What we are putting forward in terms of our national income, our GDP, our growth rates, and other numbers like that are compiled by ZimStats, which is a peer-reviewed organization. They are part of an international group of statistical officers, which are administered by certain guidelines by the United Nations and other independent organizations. So ZimStats is not one which is going to be providing misleading statistics. That's a very wrong point of view. Secondly, if we look at our numbers for GDP, per capita GDP and growth rates, irrespective of the policy mishaps that we may have had in the last few years, all these numbers are actually agreed with the World Bank and the IMF. And in fact, one reason why there's a lot of confusion about the numbers that he has put forward, and he's right in that sense, is that he has used mainly numbers in Zimbabwe dollars. Now, we know that Zimbabwe dollar was highly volatile, there were high levels of inflation, so numbers that are put forward in Zimbabwe dollars are not reliable. But that's not how government operates. I mean, I have numbers here which I won't go into of GDP from 2019, agreed with the World Bank and the IMF, These are all numbers which are calculated in United States dollars. So it's calculated in a stable currency. Now, if you put it into Zimbabwe dollars, yes, you'll go all over the place. 10 trillion, 100 trillion, billion trillion. Let's forget about that. But we don't operate on that basis. We operate on statistics which are in a more stable currency, the United States dollar, which you look at in constant prices. And if anybody is interested, I'm happy to share these numbers with them, which show what has been happening to GDP and indeed inflation over the last few years. So I think that we have reliable statistics and we shouldn't be confused by numbers which are presented in this manner. Now, so I think that those are the general comments that I want to make. But as I said, we largely agree with many of the policy options that he has presented, and indeed government is committed to the implementation of them. Now, before I go to the structured currency, I'd just like to say, what is the logic of the structured currency? Why have we gone for the structured currency? Hawkins will say it's more of the same thing, and that's what he has said to you. Okay? So why is it that we don't agree with him and we say that it's not more of the same thing? So let me focus on the fundamental problem. That's what I will talk. I won't go into the other details, commenting on the other issues that he had raised. So the fundamental problem that we've had in the last several years is growth of money supply. There's no denying that. Money supply has been out of control. And that's the reason, and it's very basic for anyone who understands economics. You don't have to teach economics. You know, if you've done your first year in economics, money supply growth, if it's out of control, it will cause inflation to be out of control. It will also cause the exchange rate to depreciate and be out of control. But there's been some legacy issues, historical issues, why this money supply situation has been the way it was and why it has now changed. So those are the two things I want to talk about, and that leads me to the structured currency. So one of the key reasons why money supply was out of control was that the central bank was printing money. And they were not printing money for the fun of it. We were in a situation where the Second Republic inherited a lot of debt, external debt, from Afrexim Bank and other creditors worth several $1 billion. This external debt was being serviced by the central bank. Now, as you know, no central bank really has any income. Their only income generally is seniorage. That's from the notes that they issue. So the central bank, to service those debts, external debts, from creditors who had supplied us with foreign exchange over the last 7, 8, 10 years, was printing money to service those debts. And that was the primary cause of increase in money supply. That was the primary cause of inflation, and that was the primary cause of depreciation of the exchange rate. And that continued into the first quarter of this year. Now, when we talk about inflation, I have also to talk about 2024, and then I'll move to the structured currency. So in the first quarter of this year, we continued to have that money supply growth, which resulted for those 3 months of an inflation rate of maybe 600 or 700%. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's in that maybe more 800%. But since the structured currency has been introduced, the ZIG has been introduced in April, we have had stable inflation. So now, if you take that 700% for the first 3 months and add it to what's happening in a stable manner now, of course, for the year of 2024, you'll get average inflation of 500 or 600%. But that's a very misleading way of looking at it. That story is finished. That story is over, and I'll explain to you. My colleague from the Reserve Bank has touched on some of the issues, but that story is completely over. And to explain to you what was the reason why we introduced the structured currency. So I've already explained to you that money supply was out of control during the Zim dollar era for a specific reason. So one of the key things that the government did last year, in the middle of last year, in conjunction with advice from the World Bank and the IMF, is what was creating that problem, which was this $3 or $4 billion of debt, which was lying with the central bank, for which they were printing money to service. That was what they call the quasi-fiscal operations of the central bank. They were taken over entirely by the Ministry of Finance. They were moved from the central bank to Treasury. So what it means is that the central bank did not have to service our external debt. So there was no reason for them anymore to print money. So this process started in June and it was completed sometime in December. All those liabilities, they are legacy liabilities from the First Republic, but we have to honor them because, they are our external creditors. They have been taken over by Treasury and now they're being financed under the budget from tax revenues, which means that we do not have a situation anymore of the central bank printing money. The central bank is not printing money. Now, to go further and to ensure that we put in a system in place which would prevent the further printing of money, that was the logic of introducing the structured currency.
Excuse
now,
me,
structured
Prof,
currency
you 1
is
minute.
something like a currency board. Hong Kong has the currency board. What it means basically is that you cannot print local money, you cannot release local money unless it is 100% backed by United States dollars or a convertible currency or gold or anything which is convertible, a reserve. So that's the approach that the government has now taken in terms of the structured currency. So what it implies is that we had, when we converted the parallel market rate at the end of March this year was about 34,000, as Hawkins has indicated, that's correct. So we used that to estimate what would be, when we converted the currency, how much that would be in local, in ZiG at a conversion rate. And it came to about 2.5 billion ZiG. Now at the exchange rate of 13 or 14, that roughly comes to about $200 million. So what we essentially did was said, we've got reserves of $200 or $250 million, or maybe $300 million at the most. That is going to back the local currency which is in circulation. And that target has been maintained. And that indeed is the anchor that is being maintained by the Monetary Policy Committee and by the central bank in terms of creation of new liquidity. In other words, creation of new Zimbabwe, of the ZWG. And that's the reason why you see the stability. It's not fictitious. The stability in the ZiG at the moment, because the amount of money in circulation, unlike in the past, where it was increasing in thousands of %, is no longer happening. So money supply was the fundamental problem. I won't go into all the other issues that Hawkins has raised, but this key area has been dealt with, and it has been dealt with through the introduction of a structured currency which is fully backed by reserves. Now, these reserves are more than adequate to convert all the Zimbabwe dollars, all the ZiG which is in circulation into US dollars, if the central bank and the government so wish. But we do not want to do that because the whole idea is that we want to move from the dual currency where we are towards a mono currency. It will take time. You cannot do that overnight, and it's not something you can just do. There's no confidence is not there in the local currency. So you have to create that confidence. So over time, measures will be put in place to increase the value and the popularity of the local currency. And as my colleague from the central bank has indicated, and this is something that all of you need to take account of, which is that more and more of taxation by government is now going to be denominated and required to be paid in local currency. It doesn't matter what the currency of your sales are. So you might be receiving 100% of your sales revenue in US dollars. But in the September QPD, and the idea is to go to Parliament so that we can get this in place, 50% of that is likely to be payable in ZiG. And if you don't have the ZiG, well, that's your problem. So you better start thinking about it. So the idea is that it doesn't matter what your currency of sales, currency of revenue is, but going forward, the third QPD is very likely that 40 or 50% of it you will have to pay in the local currency. Please keep this in mind. So there are other measures though. What the government has already done is customs duty, except for certain items like luxury cars and luxuries like that. Customs duty is already payable in local currency. It's required to be paid in local currency. So the idea is to increase the demand for local currency over time, and as that demand increases, then the central bank will expand the amount of liquidity, again based on the amount of reserves that they have. Now you may ask, where are these reserves coming from? So one of the sources of reserves is royalty payments. Royalty payments are coming from gold, platinum, diamond, whatever it is, some in kind, etc. All those royalty payments which have been coming over the last 2 to 3 years is the basis on which they have collected the gold in the central bank. And that will increase over time. So those reserves will be maintained. The central bank, going forward, if there are certain savings that it can make in terms of the foreign exchange surrenders, that will also add to reserves. So we are going to be very strict about linking the amount of convertible reserves to the amount of local currency in circulation. So it's not more of the same thing. That's what I'm trying to say. In the past, there were all these statements made about we'll do this and we'll do that. But now mechanisms and systems have been put in place to link the amount of money supply, local currency, and we have the numbers, and the MPC monitors it on a regular basis, and that is linked to convertible currencies and gold.
Thank
So
you very
can
much,
expect-
Prof.
You can expect the structured currency to maintain its level of stability. There are many other issues, but I won't go into them.
Maybe if
Yeah.
you have more points, we will try and give you some more time during the discussion.
That's
But
fine.
I'm sure you have made your point now. Let's put our hands together for Prof.
Right, sir. Thank you.
One.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. I know it's a subject which needs more time, but I'm sure the room has received your points, which brought balance to some of the speakers and also bring perspectives to why certain things were being done and how you intend to manage it going forward. So basically saying, trust us this time around. Now let's hear from market players. Mr. President, you are a market player, you are a business person, you are affected by these issues. Can you respond from a business person perspective, because you are on the ground, you are the foot soldier, you are the one being hard hit by these issues. Forgive me, Mr. President, you have just 2 minutes. I'm sure you will not exceed. Thank you, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 2 minutes may be tricky. I think we are the voice of business. So I'm wearing two hats. I will speak on my own behalf and also speak on behalf of business. So 2 minutes may probably not be enough, but I'll try
Okay,
to
let's agree. I'll add a minute.
It's okay. I will
Okay.
try to rush through the issues. It's important that we bring them out. Okay, so the starting point is that from Dr. Moyo's presentation, where he highlighted that the success of ZIG is the success of all of us. This is exactly the position that we adopted as the Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce when this currency was introduced 5 April 2024. We engaged the central bank. We raised our concerns. Members had concerns. I remember in Harare we had 2 sessions. We went with the governor to Masvingo. We went with the governor to Gweru. We went with the governor to Bulawayo. We went with the governor to Mutare. The whole idea was to make the members highlight all the matters that they had. And throughout that journey, the governor made promises. And we actually appealed to our members to accept and embrace ZIG. And the promise that we made was that we are going to review progress at our Congress in Victoria Falls. I personally made that promise. The whole idea was to say to the members, yes, we have got concerns, but let's embrace it. Do we have an option anyway? So, like we promised the governor, we kept the promises that he made throughout when we were traveling with him. And I will go through those promises. I just listed a few. And then we have always advocated for evidence-based engagements. We did a very short survey. So I'll conclude by going through the results of the survey that we did. I think that will sufficiently answer the issues around the concerns of business. So first of all, like what has already been highlighted, The governor indicated that we have now introduced a stable currency because it's backed by gold. I think so far, so good. We can't say more about that, both on the parallel market and official. It's been stable. It's a promise that they made. I think so far, so good. And then the governor also promised us that he would consult widely before issuing out any new measures. I think so far, so good. We have been working hand in hand with our bank, and we are ticking. And then he also even indicated that we will not surprise the market with any big announcements from now going forward. We were waiting eagerly to find out because we knew the MPC was sitting yesterday, and we wanted to just understand how things panned out. When I was seated there, I got the summary of the discussions. They have maintained all measures, which means so far, so good. There has not been any surprise announcements. And then, like what was highlighted by my brother, he also promised that we will not print more money as long as we have not grown the reserves. I expected probably from Dr. Moyo that we got the numbers of reserves that we had on 5 April 2024. It's now 3 months down the line. We just wanted to understand what the situation is right now. The reason being that there's a general feeling in the economy that there's been a bit more zig. You can just feel it. Because at times you get your major clients saying, we want to pay in zig. So there's that feeling. We haven't really managed to figure it out, but it was going to be good if we had been informed by RBZ in terms of our reserves. Where are we? Because even if you don't do a stock take at times, you can simply print the value of your inventory at any particular date. Are we still where we were on 5 April? It's an important question, which all members have probably need to take note and then respond. And then the governor said, go to your bank if you have got legitimate foreign currency obligations. You get foreign currency. It's a promise that was made. The survey that we did is also providing some answers to that, because we are getting mixed reactions. There are some that are saying they did not get, some are saying they got part, some are saying they got the full amount. So I would like to conclude by giving you the percentages from the survey that we did. But tied on to this, there's the issue of the free market. They've already talked about it, that we now have the free market, the willing buyer, willing seller, and the exchange rate is determined by market forces. The other feedback from the banks when they are engaging with members is that we are still waiting for allocation from RBZ. So the impression that's there is it's still some meeting that's sitting at RBZ and allocating numbers. And then some of the allocations, you can't even tell how they were determined. Someone was saying to me, I applied for 650,000 and I got 11,000. And I did not understand how it was derived. So perhaps it's also a sign that maybe we have got more willing buyers and less willing sellers. And then people then wonder, how then is the exchange rate being determined? Is it being artificially suppressed? Is it something that will be sustained in the future? Those are questions that members have got. And then there's the issue of our owed monies. Monies owed to those that had won bids on the owed foreign auction, and also those that had surrender requirements, forex taken, but the ZWL was not credited to their accounts. They were owed. And we were informed that all those debts are now converted into commercial paper, one maturing in 24 months, the other in 12 months, and then they'll be earning interest at 7.5%. And we're also finding out from members, have you received the NNCDs? And unfortunately, even in the report, nobody has highlighted that they got their NNCD, and it's now 3 months down the line. We also need to hear what the story is about that. When we engaged the last time, we had even said, yes, we have accepted, because the bank appealed to us to also make a bit of a sacrifice for the sake of the nation. And we said we have now understood that the money has been tied up for the next 24 months. The sacrifice is there, but may you make the certificate transferable, because we were saying some had genuine concerns because customers had made prepayments, they were demanding payment, they demanding delivery of goods and services. And some of those who had prepaid were actually saying they had borrowed the money and they needed to service debts. So there's a genuine issue there. So if the certificate is transferable, when you are facing a really dire situation and someone has got excess liquidity, then you can trade it with other counterparts so that you save business. Because at the end of the day, we do not want to kill businesses. We were also, because the governor last time he said we would think about it. So we were also expecting that there was going to be feedback in that regard. Sorry, Director of Ceremonies. In brief, from the survey that we carried out, 50% of the respondents indicated that they had submitted requests for foreign currency from the central bank. The other 50% indicated they had not. We also wanted to understand why they had not. And the major reason given was that they had sufficient foreign currency from their operations. And they didn't need to go to the central bank. And you find that from those 50% that highlighted that they had submitted requests, 33% indicated that they received the full amount, and then 33% indicated that they did not get anything. Instead, they were given feedback that we have seen you have got money in your nostro accounts, therefore exhaust that first, and then you can then apply for foreign currency. And then the remainder indicated that they got part allocations, which is where my earlier point was coming from, how that part allocation is being done, because you want to import a piece of machinery and you submit, you get part, you submit again, you get part, submit again, you get part. At times it disrupts a business. It would be good to understand from the perspective of the central bank how that has been. And then Dr. Moyo talked about the acceptability of ZIG, that it has been embraced. It's also confirmed from our survey. All the respondents indicated that they accept ZIG for transacting. But they were then indicating that their banks were giving them the feedback that they didn't have any notes or coins for them to use. So in terms of the notes that have gone into the market, we don't know what's happening, whether they are reaching all the four corners of the country. I even got the other feedback that there are certain economies that are actually operating in this country. The southern part of the country towards Beit Bridge, starting from the Midlands, there are people that actually use the rand. And the ZIG, I'm told, is not even accepted there. They have their own currency that they use and their own exchange rate. And I'm told it's been running for quite some time. So the members also had recommendations. It's just in point form, the things that they indicated that the central bank need to just look at. Let me just run down. It's a few points. The first one is speaking to what they are already doing, where members are saying, please stick to your promises, walk the talk, do not excessively print money. That's the first recommendation. And then secondly, they are saying, make foreign currency available. In fact, they are preferring a willing seller, willing buyer arrangement. Let the seller name their price. If they are willing buyers at that particular named price, let transactions occur, and then the market will determine the exchange rate. This is coming straight from the members. And then regarding the surrender requirements, because there is also a feeling that the exporters are surrendering at a rate that's actually being forced on them. And then they are also suggesting that, yes, perhaps the suggestion that let's stop surrender is untenable. But as you are surrendering, because it's my money, can I have a say on the rate? Can I also be a willing seller of that foreign currency on the market? It's also coming from the members. And then the issue of confidence deficit, which has been talked about. They are saying let's have consistency throughout. And I think so far, so good. And then creating demand for the ZIG, like we have had the 50% QPDs, and members feel we actually need more. Like he indicated, maybe in September, we will be paying all the taxes in our local currency because we have to defend it. And members actually gave two examples. They are hot examples. The first one being fuel, and the second one being passports. Those keep on coming. And the government and the central bank need to also just have that in mind. And then in conclusion, one point that they also highlighted, they indicated the issue of transparency when it comes to the determination of the exchange rate. Because what they are saying is that on one hand, we are being told it's backed by minerals. On the other hand, we are saying we have now adopted a free market. So they want to understand what's exactly determining the rates that they are getting every morning from their banks. Is it the transactions that occurred or gold prices? How is it occurring? Members are requesting that transparency. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Mr. Facilitator, just a point for you. If the audience so wishes, I'm happy to respond to all those issues that the President has raised.
Okay.
All of them.
We take note of that.
Official position.
Thank you very much. We
Yeah.
take note of that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. I also want to give the other panelists who have not spoken before we come back to Prof to give us the response from a policymaker perspective concerning the issues that the business has raised, among other things. As we do that, let's also be thinking about the resolutions we would want to make, because that's what will follow after this discussion, and all that should happen in the next few minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for the articulating both as a market player and also as voice of business. Thank you very much for that. I think the survey you articulated, it's quite authoritative in the discussion of the matter that we are looking at. Right, we are honored this afternoon to have the principal country economist from African Development Bank, Mr. Kevin K. Banda, who is also here, and I'm sure he is going to bring perspectives from a global or regional financier perspective, because they have an influence in terms of some of the issues we are talking about here. If you recall, Mr. Hawkins, in his presentations, one of the solutions he was suggesting is a hybrid of debt relief and paradigm shift. And that issue of debt relief, obviously, it's something outside our control. It's dependent on external forces, among other things. So as a regional or an international finance institution, you have certain interests in the subject matter, and you have certain recommendations concerning the issues that both policymakers and market players need to take note of. Briefly, Mr. Banda, thank you very much. A round of applause for Mr. Banda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I know I have 2 minutes. I had so many points to raise, but let me just try to be brief. First of all, I think to make a comment, a general comment, that I think from the African Development Bank point of view, we actually welcome the introduction of the ZIG. I think the experience of the depreciation that we had since last year on the Zimbabwe dollar to the US dollar until March this year, I think it was necessary for the government to take action. And the action was taken. Perhaps we can debate around how it was taken, whether timeliness of taking it, and so on. But I think the important issue from our perspective is that the decision was taken, and today we can stand for that, to say that the currency has been stable. The inflation has gone down significantly. We have seen that both on the US dollar, but also on the ZIG. So this is a plus which we are taking forward as African Development Bank. So let me make 2 comments, Chair, Moderator. First, I think it's around building confidence around the ZIG. That's an issue which I think on the continent that we've been grappling with, is how do we make our local currencies, really competitive, that everyone else in the economy can trust and believe that we have the right policies that are supporting our currency. For Zimbabwe, historically, we have an issue because this is not the first time that the currency, there's an introduction of a new currency. I think if I'm not wrong, probably this is the 60th currency. So, so there's an issue around confidence from the market on the currency, in this particular case, the ZiG. So building confidence takes time. It's never imposed, but actually it's earned. So it will be earned over time, depending on the sort of policies that the government and the central bank are putting in place to make sure that they support the functioning of the currency. Two issues here. One is with regards to the reserves that support the ZiG. I think the outgoing president has just mentioned that. I think that's fundamental. How do we provide this information to the economy, to the business actors, that we do have sufficient reserves that will back our currency? I think that is an important aspect which the central bank needs to find ways of communicating that in a transparent manner, that everyone in the economy, the economic agents, are satisfied that we have a currency that is well supported. And the second aspect to that is the use of the currency. You know, how are we rolling it out there in the economy, in the multi-currency environment, but the ZiG has got a growing use? So which services, which products are covered by the ZiG? Is it everything else? So if we manage that well, that we can buy fuel and other products, we can pay all our taxes and so on in the ZiG, I think that will create that demand. So the use of the ZiG will slowly be growing, and then we can have a plan of the transition from the multi-currency. The second aspect, which is, I thought it's important, is with regards to the impact, the current impact, which needs to be managed. The impact of the introduction of the ZiG. Firstly, perhaps 2 points as well here. First is, how do we manage the implications or the policy implications on the fiscal side? Obviously, the macro framework may be affected, the budget may be affected because we have introduced a new currency with the changed exchange rates and so on and so on. How do you recalibrate that with minimal impact or minimal disruption in the economy? I think that is very important so that the transition is properly managed. Similarly, on the monetary side, I think, how do we manage the monetary policy, for example, with interest rates that have changed to ensure stability in the economy, in the financial system? So this is particularly important. And with regards to the presentation which was made by Professor Hopkins, there was a conclusion which said, how do we support, which way do we go? Or do we go the liberal kind of policy direction? I think the African Development Bank has been supporting the arrears clearance and debt resolution for Zimbabwe. Our president, Dr. Adesina, is a champion of that process. And we have been assured by the state president, the ministers, that this is the direction that the country wants to take. And we have been there to support the country to address the issue of arrears clearance. Now, specifically to the introduction of the ZiG, has got a short-term impact. The short-term impact comes with the implementation of the staff monitored program with the IMF. The initial discussions and agreements with the government, with development partners and creditors, was that by now we would have a staff monitored program in place. A staff monitored program managed by the IMF was really a vehicle for implementing some key policy reforms, especially on the macro front, on the economic front. So that has been, so to say, delayed a bit because the IMF needed to undertake an assessment of the economy following the introduction of the ZiG. So now the timelines for that have been pushed forward to the second half of the year, towards the end of this year. So that there's an immediate impact because of the introduction of the ZIG, but the ZIG, introduction of the ZIG was also very important and timely in our view. So we needed to manage that process, but perhaps also to manage the expectations that go with the implementation of the SMP. So I can stop there, Chair. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. I think it's comforting to hear an institution like yours giving a thumbs up to the currency interventions that our nation has made. I think it's one thing to hear your own policy makers defending policy, but I think there is consolidation of the matter when an external institution and especially your institution, which is a key partner in the whole process, when it gives thumbs up to currency. I think it's comforting to business and certainly to this House. If there were any doubts concerning the policy direction around currency, I think your comments, they are comforting and encouraging. So we thank you so much for that perspective and also some of the proposals that you articulated. Thank you very much. Last but not least, we have a guru in the matter as well, and is the CEO of Leon Africa, Mr. Tinashe Murapata. Is going to give perspective to this. How is it working on your side? Is
it okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. Being the last speaker, I suppose I have to respond to what everyone has said. Otherwise, what I had prepared would be redundant. I think a lot of the items have been said already. And maybe to begin, they say that the best way of wooing a woman is to tell her that this time it will be different. And it turns out that that's the most popular line for every central bank governor who comes on board. And it's not just for Zimbabwe, it's right across the globe, right? Is to tell everybody that this time it'll be different. And the advice that people are given, and here I'm giving the advice to women, that whenever you hear that line, you should not walk, but you should run. The reason why I'm saying this is because there's one thing, the new currency was launched on 8 April, and it's less than 90 days. The one thing that is the same with the previous regime is there's no information whatsoever. So we actually don't know how many ZIGs are actually out there on the market. We have no idea. But what we do know, and the president has already highlighted this, and these are actual figures. So I'll give you actual figures from some of the big manufacturers and retailers. Just before ZIG was launched, this is in March, it was about, sales were about 14% local currency and 86% was US dollars. In June, right, it was now 46% ZIG and 54% USD. Now the problem is a lot of that ZIG is piling up at the banks because they want to convert it into goods and services, but they cannot because the Reserve Bank is not giving them the currency. Now, if, as we're told, that this is a fully bagged currency, then it should be fully fungible. Whoever has ZIG should be able to go to a bank, go to AT Samora Machel, and they should be able to get their US dollars or gold and be able to import. So there is a big problem there. And part of it is we just don't have the information. That's number one issue that we need to address. The second issue that we need to address, and this is looking at the banking sector, and that is really where my worry is. Because what happened is, when you look at the nostro that's in the banking sector, the total deposits that we are now being told, again, we don't have the official numbers, but once in a while, the governor will tell us something, but we don't have official numbers, is that the total deposit is now about 2.7 billion US dollars. Of that, real money is about $1 billion. So you've got about credit deposits of about 1.7 billion. Now, I use the term, picking up on what Prof. Hawkins talked about, this time would be different, is that what you tend to find that with that 1.7 billion credit is that part of it are TBs that were discounted in this market. Part of it are loans that are non-performing. Part of it, there's no liquidity within that nostril. So whenever and this is coming directly from manufacturers and retailers, whenever they want to transfer their nostrils into goods and services that's importing, they're able to do so. So you have this credit balance that is floating in the market, and we don't know what's going to happen. We have ZIG that's floating in the market, that's piling up in the banks, and is unable to be converted into real US dollars. Why? Because the last 70, 80 days, it's the fear of God that is determining the market. Everybody knows that there were 500 traders of foreign currency that were arrested. Everybody knows that the banks, every day, money is wiped off their balance sheet, taken to the central bank. Liquidity is sucked from the central bank. This is ZIG liquidity. And the banks or a manufacturer has to send a request to FIU specifically telling them how they should use their money. So it's the fear of God. How far can the fear of God take us to the next level? We don't know. It's only been less than 90 days, right? So to claim that it's been successful, I don't think that we have evidence to suggest that. It's still early days, and the early days, what we're seeing is it has not been fully fungible. Now, part of the reason why it hasn't been fully fungible is the last cabinet meeting put up a that's where we're getting information now from the cabinet files. And they put up this number that we have to import private sector is going to import about 1 million metric tons of maize, of grain, and then government is going to import about 300,000. Now, if you think about 1 million metric tons, that is, the millers are now queuing, looking for that currency. Last year, that wasn't there because we had actually produced. So that is going to be a lot of pressure on the foreign currency market. And the governor and treasury have not come to actually inspire confidence in the market that how is this going to be dealt with. And what we look for is hardcore data. So I think the idea to continuously telling us that this time is different, I think that has run out of steam. We need to see the data. Money is what money does. They need to show us that it is fully fungible, and so far it's not there. Now, the final thing that I want to raise, which nobody has raised, which I think is an elephant in the room, and we need to talk about it, especially for us as market analysts, is the corruption. So for everybody, we've been reading about corruption, and as a pastor, I think you respond to it from a moral perspective, that this is morally abhorrent, and lots of people will look at it in different ways. But as market participants, as market analysts, there's one way in which we look at it, which is very dangerous for our economy. And I wish that the ministers were here to hear this, that the way we look at it, especially with rent-seeking behavior, if you're an economist, what you see is this is market signaling. So while everyone else, and I'm not moralizing, I'm just looking at it from an analyst perspective, that when people now can directly correlate that rent-seeking equals Rolls-Royce, in their minds as a market participant, first of all, it means that whoever was rent-seeking decides, well, actually I can increase my price. Just like if you're moving into Avondale or wherever, if you're someone from abroad and you come into the country and you want to rent out a place, you look at the classifieds and then you realize, oh, that's the price that is paid in a particular area. Similarly, what we are reading from the newspapers, from a market analyst perspective, is they're telling us what the going price for rent seeking is. So it doesn't matter whether it's goats or whatever it is, but it's just telling us that in this market, the rent seeking premium, this is the rent seeking premium. Never mind even if they do get arrested. Never mind what happens. And this is important, especially to policymakers, that you need to keep that in mind, that what you're doing is, it's dangerous. You need to respond to it, and you need to respond to it drastically, not from a virtuous perspective, but from a market signaling perspective. Because if it is allowed, what you can tell is that next year and the year after, the rent-seeking premium for almost everything in our economy will increase. Because now people are doing the calculations and they're thinking, well, actually I should have just increased mine, because it's possible. So I think rent-seeking as in a market is very dangerous. And this is something that I totally agree with policymakers, and as business, we need to be in tandem, and we need to fight it. And we need to fight it coherently with the same messaging, because it is terrible for the market. When you go to Nigeria or anywhere else in the world, they will tell you that for this thing to happen, this is how much you need to pay. And usually it's something that you already have in your pocket, so you don't mind paying it. Now imagine an investor trying to come to Zimbabwe, and remember, we're advertising the rent. That's essentially what we're doing in the market, is we're advertising the rent. We're turning off investors, we're turning off domestic investors, and we're turning off the market. It is not what we want. And I want to encourage the policymakers that are here to know that this is a fight that we're willing to partner with you to ensure that we reduce the amount of, rent seeking is always there. Let's be fair. But at these levels, there will be nothing left in this country. And I think that will be an indictment to the future generations. Thank you very much.
Wow. Let's put our hands together. Eish. Chris, you did a good job to bring these sharpshooters up front. I think let's clap hands for Chris and his team. Yay. Yay. I was enjoying the clear articulation of thoughts. I think this is excellent. I'm tempted to throw in a few questions, but I'm not the Congress. You are the Congress. I want to give you an opportunity to respond or add or suggest. I'm aware that Prof would want to clarify a few policy position issues concerning some of the issues that we articulated. So I'll come back to you, Prof. I just want to accommodate the House so that when you respond, at least you cover everything all at once. Right, it's your time now. I see that hand, that row. Is it the 1, 2, 3, 4th row? Can I have a mic that side? And my good friend Mzansi has his hand as well. So you'll be the second one. So I need a third one so that we just close this one. Right. Oh, okay. There's a hand there. Right. So in that order, we start with you, then we go to my friend here, and then we end with you there. Thank you very much. Let's be brief so that at least we accommodate others. Thank you.
Thank you, Director of Ceremonies. My name is Leonard Msariri. I come from Ozo Security Private Limited. I would have loved to make a lot of comments even from the first sessions, but unfortunately, because we are run out of time, I'll go straight into my proposed resolution for the Congress, that the number of topics that we are putting for the Congress and the speakers that we are not doing justice to any one of the speakers, to ourselves, because we are not exhausting any of the discussions that we need to do. So at the end of the day, we are coming up with half-baked positions. So in that regard, we would rather increase the time that we spend debating on a particular subject, therefore increasing the number of days that people stay here, which I know business people, we tend not to have. But look, it's not for anyone's good for us to be debating things and not concluding, actually not exhausting the debates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think excellent. I'm sure there's concurrence in terms of that aspect. We have sharp brains, but not being exhausted in the process. So I'm sure the Secretariat is taking note of that. Thank you so much for that. Right, Mzansi for sure.
I don't know about this nickname, but I will accept it because I'm hosted. Look, I just want to make a comment. It's not actually a question, and obviously time is not on our side. I think I would like, as an outsider, to encourage the central bank to focus on what our colleague from the African Development Bank is doing and saying. I think, obviously, ZIG is coming up in a context of a Zimbabwe that is not credible economically. You still have lingering sanction issues. We know the history of the economy. Now, to put something new, as drastic as a new currency, and say in the maze of uncertainty, believe us on this point, is always going to be a difficult challenge. But the fact that at least you have the African Development Bank that is saying we are willing to walk the journey with you, I think it will serve the Central Bank of Zimbabwe very good to insist that this becomes the phenomena in the circles of central bankers. Because you must lobby at that level and build credibility at that level. I live down the road in South Africa. I must also believe that this ZIG is a real currency, which is not a phenomena in South Africa yet. So I think the central bank must not focus too much time in convincing themselves that the ZIG is a serious thing. They must convince the influencers and the central bank lobbyists that this is a real thing. And I think, obviously, building the credibility in the maze of the uncertainty that Zimbabwe is globally. So I would encourage that what we got from our colleagues from the bank is actually what we must focus on, to convince the world that we know what we are doing and we are serious, and get more central bankers affirming that indeed this is a serious thing, instead of Zimbabweans trying to convince themselves that it's a serious thing. Thank you.
Wow. Oh, let's put our hands together for Mr. Kulu there from South Africa Chamber of Commerce. And I think he's bringing a very important perspective. In Shona, he's saying, Musa Zifonera. In other words, don't phone yourself. You're holding the phone, you're dialing your own number, and then you say hello. So you're saying hello, and then you hear hello there, and let someone else phone you. That's basically what he's saying. So I think it's a critical point that he's raising. Let influencers, amongst which he included other central banks, let them speak about your currency. We are not undermining the PR efforts being made by the Reserve Bank. I know you have this jingle that says 1 Ziggy, 2 Ziggy, 4 Ziggy. It's a reggae song. So whenever I'm bathing, it just comes 1 Ziggy, 2 Ziggy, 4 Ziggy. But beyond the jingle, let's have serious players speaking well about the currency. Thank you very much. I think we have the last person, that side, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Chafe Suka Blessing is my name, acting town clerk, Sito from Tara. I have two points. The first one on rent seeking. As local authorities, the tariff that we give to business is reflected from the input costs that we absorb from business. So when you go to tender and you open it up to business to supply, in most cases we realize that we incur costs that are actually 10 times what we should actually be charged. And as a result, this reflects on the tariff that business is complaining about. Then my next point is around policy position. I'm happy we have representatives from the RBZ, and I also hope we have representatives from the Ministry of Finance. If government is going to make policy pronouncement around use of foreign currency and our local currency ZIG, as local authorities, we support government policy in full, but we should not be left out whenever policies are being made. Local authorities should be treated the same as the rest, because we are buying from the same market that everyone else is buying from. And I hope also government will carry out a survey to check our level of borrowing as local authorities, because we also have US dollar loans. Once that pronouncement is made that we cannot collect in foreign currency, there are implications when it comes to servicing those loans. And we also have contracts that are in foreign currency, creditors who are supposed to be serviced in foreign currency. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for those thoughts that you proposed there. I'm aware that I promised Prof an opportunity to clarify some of the items from a policy maker perspective. If you could be brief, Prof, we have really run out of time. That would be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Facilitator. I think that the issues that your President raised are very important from the survey for business. So what I'm going to suggest is I can make some comments, but if people are interested, I'm available till tomorrow, lunch hour. I'm happy to talk to anybody freely. My door is open. If the Secretariat would wish to have a separate session on some of these issues with me, I'm happy to do that. But very quickly to respond, because I think these are all important issues from a business point of view. So just to respond to what the President has said, some of the issues. Firstly, there was the question of the arrears from the auction when it was closed. So the amount was about $93 million, and the government has stated that they are going to issue 2-year instruments at an interest rate of 7%. That's what's going to happen very soon. And just to rest concerns of the President, this was discussed yesterday in the Monetary Policy Committee, and all those instruments are going to be tradable. So that is definitely agreed to. If there's any hitch on that, the Governor, the Reserve Bank, and the MPC is always available for further consultations. So those instruments are going to be tradable. Now to talk about foreign currency allocation. Look, it's a long story, but I'll just give you the short of it. And it comes back to the issue of fungibility. So we are trying to move from a dollarized situation where 80–90% of the economy is functioning in US dollars, and an economy, no country can succeed without its national currency. There are only two countries in the world who have had the US dollar over a long period of time. Okay? So we've got to have the national currency. Now, the question is, how do we transition from a dual currency dominated by the US dollar to having a local currency? So that comes to the question of fungibility and the question of allocation. So the current situation is, if somebody has $1 million in their bank account, in their FCA, and then goes to their bank and asks for an import allocation through the bank, from the central bank, of $500,000, that is listed in the pipeline that is sent by that bank to the central bank, and the central bank will refuse to give that. Because think about it. If we start having 100% fungibility, we all know at this moment in time, the US dollar is preferable to the Zimbabwe dollar. So we'll end up in a 100% dollarized situation. And I can assure you, as an economist, you can talk to any economist, left wing, right wing, international, or whoever, if you have a dollarized economy, we are just going to crash. We're not going to get anywhere. We have to have a local currency based market. So that goes back to fungibility. That's why 100% fungibility is not being offered. And it's not. What's happening right now is, as I explained, and it's in your survey as well, which is that if you have money in your FCA, your bank, even if you have the ZIG, your bank is not going to accommodate you, and if they send it to the central bank, it will not be accommodated. And the reason why you're getting a certain proportion is maybe there's a certain amount that you hold in an FCA, and you're still applying with the ZIG that you have, so that creates a certain proportionality. We can't move away from that. If you move away from it, we go towards what my brother there is saying, full fungibility, will be 100% dollarized economy. You can forget about the local currency. So this is transitional. There's nothing that we can do about it. And I think you need to understand that that is the mechanism which is currently being operated by the banking system and by the RBZ. It is not that the money does not have backing. It does have backing. And I agree with him that more information should be released. As it happens, in the last, since the ZIG was introduced, the Reserve Bank has sold about $60 million in the interbank market, and the willing buyer, willing seller is also about 60 million. So about $120 million was traded over there. So that's one part of the story. So I'm just explaining to you how the foreign exchange applications are working, and you need to keep that in mind. If you have a substantial amount of US dollars in your FCA, then it's very unlikely that you're going to be accommodated. Some companies, large companies, have 4 accounts. They have one account in which they have all the US dollars and only other and no ZIG, and the others in which they have only ZIG and no US dollars. Now, I understand you're trying to play the market, but that doesn't work, because all those 4 accounts are visible to the Reserve Bank and to FIU. And when they look at it, they will say, no, this person only has ZIG in these 3 accounts, but there's a 4th account with